Welcome back, guys, for another video. Moving on with the second last poem. You had a number of supplemental videos for William Wordsworth's I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, which are from YouTube, and those go into extreme detail in terms of the historical background and some of the ideas about beauty and the sublime, as well as a close reading of the poem. So that's, you're not seeing me on those videos doing that analysis, but they were very, very well done videos, which is why I opted for those ones for you to get a taste of a little bit more analysis from those supplemental videos. But let's take a look at Walt Whitman's poem here, and we do want to think a little bit about the author in this case and the historical context just briefly. Okay, so we're dealing with, late 1800s. This is being written. And in terms of the author's beliefs and values, this is sort of one area that we want to focus in on for understanding this particular poem. Okay, so Whitman is an famous American poet, and associated with America, there's a number of beliefs and values that can be connected with sort of American ideology. So if you think of the American dream, this idea of progress is very important. Think of the American dream, it has equality, opportunity. So we can, on paper anyway, obviously things go on in the world that contradict some of these values, but it's a land of opportunity. It's supposed to be the land of opportunity. There's chance for equality. There's a chance for success and perhaps, material wealth. And it's supposed to be achieved through honest means, right? So you shouldn't, become part of the mafia or a gang or something and then cheat your way to these things. It's supposed to be from hard work. So it's a hard work ethic. If you're honest, you work hard, you do a good job, these things should lead to your prosperity in all of these aspects, because you have opportunity there, you have the chance for equality, and if you work hard, you'll be successful and you'll gain wealth. And, we can sort of say, in a sense, these things equal happiness. Now, the whole issue of the American dream isn't, totally connected to this poem specifically, but there are related ideas that are important. In this case, it's the idea that, that we are able to improve and to progress and to do better in and of ourselves. And the word for that is called humanism. Humanism. So I just want to talk a little bit about humanism. So Walt Whitman, he was a humanist. Okay, so he sort of had this philosophical value or this belief system. And humanism, this would be what we would call secular humanism. What's secular humanism? Secular means, in this context, non-religious. All right, well, you take a look at the word humanism, what do we see there? So the word that should obviously jump out at us here is human, right? Well, what is the belief about humans that humanism gives us? Okay, so humanism is a belief about humanity in the inherent meaning built-in, natural part of us, goodness of humanity, and also humanity's ability, human ability to improve ourselves. Okay, so to improve ourselves means to progress, right? Now, how do we do that? How do we, improve ourselves and progress? This improvement project is part of the human endeavor that began, there was something called Christian humanism originally, which began with a guy named Erasmus in the 1500s in Europe. And it was connected to something called the Renaissance. And the Renaissance was a resurgence or a rediscovery of classical literature like Greek and Latin literature like Plato and Aristotle and things like that. And it had to do with art. It had to do with religion and philosophy. And it was the idea that we can kind of improve society through culture. Okay, so improve society through education, art, culture, etc. Now, because they would say initially, when it was Christian humanism, there was an equality of being made in the image of God. And because every human being has this natural dignity of being made in God's image, it means we have the capacity for goodness and free will and charity and so on. Now, the fact that, humanism, there was also a non-religious kind of humanism, a secular humanism, just sort of said, well, we don't really need God, for that. We can just kind of improve ourselves. Just do it ourselves. How? Through things like education, art, culture. So they would kind of take out the religion aspect. And so Walt Whitman falls in that category. So there's going to be a couple important lines in the poem that we'll touch on that, we really need to know, like, what's he talking about here? It has to do with humanism. Okay, because he's going to make some religious references, but he's going to change the meaning of those religious references to non-religious things in the context of the poem. Okay, so you don't always have to do a big background on the author, but in this case it's helpful, and it will give us a little bit deeper insight into the poem. So we'll probably have a couple videos on this poem, but let's dive in here and read it and do a close reading together. All right, an old man's thought of school. An old man's thought of school. An old man gathering youthful memories and blooms that youth itself cannot. All right, a few questions off the top of the bat. Do we know anything about the speaker yet? And do we know anything about who the speaker is addressing? Well, yeah, we know he's an old man. And that's repeated twice in the first two lines. So we do know something about the speaker as well. So why would the poet add this descriptive adjective? Like, what do we care that it's an old man's thought of school? Well, what would that communicate to us? The fact that he's an old man. Well, it should give us this idea of experience, and it should give us this idea of wisdom and distance, because he's not probably been in school for a long time, being an old man. So these are his reflections about school. And here we have a capital S, school. Why capitalize that? Don't get confused here. That's not personification. Why? Because school is not given any human attributes here, or human abilities. So what it shows us is an important topic. When you capitalize something, it makes the whole big topic important. So what it kind of means is an old man's thought on education, really, on school. So he's not talking about one specific school. He's talking about the whole institution of school, right? The institution of education. Now he says an old man, and notice we had, we'll get another one of these later, but when we have an old man's and old man's, two different lines in the poem, starting with multiple words that are the same, although it doesn't ask you that in the prompts. What's that? We know that technique, right? Anaphora. He's gathering youthful memories and blooms that youth itself cannot. What does that mean? So an old man, and he's gathering things that seem like flowers, blooms, but what are they actually that he's gathering? He's gathering youthful memories and blooms. So what's he thinking about? He's remembering when he was young. But notice the positive imagery, this flower imagery. Things that are in bloom means they freshly budded. It's springtime. You know, the flowers are blooming. But what this old man is gathering, young people can't gather. Youth itself cannot gather what he's gathering. Okay? So that leads us back to experience and wisdom. He's looking back on his time as a young person in school, and he's able to gather something beautiful from those memories that young people can't get, that young people can't see, because they don't have that experience. Right? He's able to pluck flowers and to understand things that you can't when you're young. There are things you don't realize about this topic, but he does realize because he's older. Now only do I know you, O fair auroral skies, O morning dew upon the grass. So why is he putting all these exclamation points here? Okay, he has a strong emotion. He's remembering when he was young, the beautiful skies, the dew on the grass. Maybe you're walking to school or looking out the window, but now only he knows these things properly. Because he has experience and wisdom, as he looks back on his childhood memories, he sees something truly about it. And that gives him the strong emotion. He sees something valuable and beautiful. Fair auroral skies.